Okay, here's where we are. So initially, I think I told you I'd replaced this O-ring on the top cap, right? Pretty sure I got video of that. Pretty simple. It was the 90 durometer Boss type 916 O-ring, specifically designed for this situation where you have threads, and it went on top here. Okay, put it all back together. It did help the leak, but it was dripping. It was dripping from the bottom, and somehow seeping past this also. So I pulled it back apart, and when I had this in here, I thought that it needed a slotted tool, and I thought this was threaded. But the O-ring wasn't too bad, but it just needed a light tap. So I got my brass punch and tapped it. It normally sits out farther than this, but I'm not going to shove it all the way in right now. But I just tapped it. Somebody on a forum had told me just tap it, it'll come out. So it did. So that popped out fairly easy. So I went back down to the cat store that had the O-rings for this, and went ahead and replaced this O-ring. It was in pretty good shape, actually, but I replaced it anyway. It's cheap, right? They did mention that these white things can get bad. They said they weren't really wiping rings, which I feel like they are, almost like rings on a piston on an engine, but they actually told me they were to help keep the O-ring from rolling, I guess. But I don't know. It seemed like to me you would just make this slot smaller and have the O-ring fit tight. So I feel like these white things are wiping rings, but whatever. So I got that one replaced. But my problem was I wasn't sure how to get. Let me turn this on. There's what they call a quad O-ring down there. That also looks like an O-ring that can wipe. So in fact, here it is right here. And they called that a quad O-ring. And it sits just beyond this snap ring right there. And at first I thought I was going to have to take that snap ring off, but I was just able to get a pick. Just get a pick on this side and pop it out, and then finagle it back in. So I didn't have to remove that snap ring. Thank God, because I have to get a tool. My snap ring didn't go down that deep. So that's where we're at. So another issue I'm worried about is right where that quad ring is, there was quite a bit of gunk on here, and it might have been rust. There was some old dried up lube, looked like that was kind of wedged in here, maybe from factory. But that's been 22, 23 years, and there's some scratch marks on there, but I just lightly sanded it. But I'm going to take some emery cloth or something a little bit less abrasive and try to work some of this stuff off here, because I'm worried that it's going to scuff up the O-ring and not seal, because this is right where that O-ring sits. It's right where all this corrosion was. One side looked pretty good, but then as you came across, and this was way worse than this. It was way thick of gunk. So I'm going to take something, either a really fine sandpaper grit or emery cloth or something, and try to work the best I can some of these chunks off, because I feel like that over time is just going to mess up that O-ring and it might not seal. And that's probably why it wasn't sealing, because the O-ring that I took out of there, the quad O-ring that I took out, was actually not in super bad shape. It wasn't as pliable. It got hard over years, but it wasn't eaten away and deteriorated. So that's that. So I'm going to throw this back together after I clean this off and throw it back in the coach and do a leak test again and see what happens. All right.